Welcome to Slash Bash, where today I am bringing you another Entitled Parents Reddit video. In our first story, my entitled parents attempt to break up my relationship. Let's jump right in. Okay, this is a long one, but I hope it is worth the read. My wife is a long-time lurker, and I have recently started reading these and listening to the stories, so I was inspired to post. My parents have long been a pain in the butt, but for now, I am going to mainly focus on my Thanksgiving from hell and the incidents leading to it. A few years ago, I met my future wife on an online dating app. We hit it off fairly quickly, and the relationship progressed really fast. I was in my late 20s, she turned 30 soon after we met. We both had a good idea of what we were looking for in a partner and had no interest in games. I met her parents within a few months, though I was much more reluctant to introduce her to mine for reasons that will become apparent. The problems began almost as soon as I told my folks I was dating someone. This was about 6 months into my relationship, as I was reluctant to inform my parents due to the fact that they had tried to call the cops on my last long-term girlfriend. I might share that story later. Myself, my brother, and my parents were having dinner at a local Mexican restaurant and making small talk. They started asking me questions about my girlfriend, mostly the usual innocent questions, but at some point I let slip that she was Jewish. Boy, was that a mistake. My parents are hyper-conservative Christians. For years, they had been trying to get me to date a girl from our church, a good friend of mine, but we were never really a match to be a couple, and always expected I would marry someone who was at least Christian. I am Christian by belief to this day, but I rarely have interactions with the church due to some incidents with the priest. Not that kind of incident, but yet another good story for later. My dad, without missing a beat, told me I should break up with her. He told me that I was going to marry a Christian girl, and that was that. I was pissed, and I don't remember the full extent of the rest of that conversation, but I told him that I was not breaking up with her, and the rest of the dinner was tense. The next couple of months went about as smooth as you might imagine, but I thought I was slowly wearing them down. At some point, they invited my girlfriend and I over for dinner, and I thought there was finally some progress being made. Nope. They got my brother to distract me in another room of the house while they sat down with my girlfriend and explained why they did not think she was good for me. They straight up told my girlfriend that she needed to break up with me because I was going to marry a good Christian girl. They even offered to pay her if she ended up leaving me. My girlfriend politely told them off and we left. Fast forward to November. My family is really big on the holidays, as I know many are, and we had very large extended family gatherings for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I think in my entire life we had only missed one of these events. I wanted to go and take my girlfriend to meet the rest of the family. My parents may have had their heads up their butts, but the rest of my family has always seemed great to me. The event would be at my grandmother's house this year, my mom's mother, with a small gathering for my dad's side the day before Thanksgiving. I talked to my grandmother, who was fine with me bringing my girlfriend up so long as she slept in a separate room. No problem. No way am I going to have sex with my girlfriend in my grandmother's house anyway. I decided to ask my mother as well. Not that I needed her permission, but I am an optimist and I hope that she would be on board, and maybe seeing my girlfriend having positive interactions with the family would help the situation. My mother was resistant at first, mainly because she was upset that we were getting an apartment together and did not want to encourage the relationship further, but eventually she agreed. I should also note I set some very clear boundaries with my mother about conversation during this trip, which she brushed off as unnecessary, but I had my guard up nonetheless. We headed out to my grandmother's city, and frankly, the first day is nothing but pleasant. My girlfriend gets to meet both of my grandmothers, some of my cousins, and other extended family. We are having a fairly good time, and I think things are actually going to go well until my girlfriend and I decide to go to a movie. We are going to see Arrival in theaters. My brother, who is 5 years older than me, wants to tag along. He rode up with my parents, my girlfriend and I came up in my car, so my brother has to ride with us to the movie. The three of us sit together and my girlfriend and I snuggle through most of it. It was a fantastic movie and the ending made me cry. My girlfriend held me as the credits rolled, but I think all the cuddles had not sat well with my brother, who was single. He got up and I will never forget what he said or the malicious tone in which he said it. "Too bad mom and dad will never let you marry her because she's Jewish." My brother jogged out of the theater before either my girlfriend or I could muster up a response. We sat there a bit dumbfounded for a few minutes. Eventually, the house lights went up in the theater and we tried to formulate a plan. I have no idea where my brother is at this point, but he can't go too far considering we drove him. I decided to call my folks, considering I have no clue where he is and really don't want to talk to him at this point. To my surprise, my mother sides with me and tells me it's all right if we just leave him. He can get an Uber back. We half consider it, but we find him on the way out and my girlfriend, used to dealing with buttholes and children in her job, completely cows him with words. He silently rides back with us, we drop him off, and my girlfriend and I go have dinner by ourselves. We debate just leaving, but decide my parents themselves have not crossed any of the boundaries we set, so we will stay for now. It would not take them long, though. That same evening, I was getting ready to watch some Netflix in bed with my girlfriend. Nothing untoward was going to happen. She just likes falling asleep to the Great British Baking Show. As I walk past the living room, my mother calls me in and complains that I am not spending enough time with my family. I am a bit angry at this common manipulation tactic from my mother, but go chat for my grandmother's sake. My mom tries to tell me that my grandmother is upset with me that my girlfriend and I are planning on moving in together before we are married. I decide that my grandmother does not need my mother being a mouthpiece for her, so I sit on the couch in between the two of them and face my grandmother. My grandmother and I chat. She is a bit worried about me moving in with a woman while unwed, but we calmly discuss the situation. She does not back down on her objection, but eventually concedes that it is my life. She likes my girlfriend, and she is happy for us regardless. This entire time, my mother has been constantly trying to butt in on the conversation, but I am physically putting myself between her and my grandmother, which is just pissing my mother off. Eventually, my father sees what is going on and also butts in. Apparently, he can't contain himself anymore and just goes off about everything he sees wrong with my relationship. I can't remember his exact gripes, I likely tuned them out, but I did call him a coward for talking crap behind my girlfriend's back. She was in her room still waiting for me. This really pissed him off, and he stormed out to fetch my girlfriend. He came back with my girlfriend in tow and proceeds to tear into her in front of me, my mom, and my grandmother, who was mortified that this was happening in her house. "My son will be a Christian. His wife will be a Christian. His children will be baptized in our church." He was nearly screaming at her. He also accused her of trying to steal my inheritance by getting knocked up by me and added some very inappropriate commentary about how he knew my girlfriend was getting older and her biological clock was ticking. Through the whole tirade, my wife stood there quietly. Like I said, she is used to dealing with buttholes and she is tough as nails. She just let him finish up and run out of energy. My girlfriend then turned to my grandmother and thanked her for her hospitality, before turning back to my father and asking, "Why did you even invite us here if you were going to act like this?" My dad yelled again, "We did not invite you here! We never would have invited you here!" At this point, I gleefully pulled out my phone and showed him the conversation I had had with my mother, where she agreed for my girlfriend to be here. My dad could not find words but just glared at his wife. At this point, I told them that my girlfriend and I were leaving. It was near 11 p.m., but we packed up my car and left for our hometown. My dad got in one more word before we left, saying, "You two better have broken up by the time you get home. Have a long, hard thought about your future," to which I just laughed as we got in the car. My girlfriend and I drove home on pure adrenaline. We alternated between angry, humiliation, and frustration at the absurdity of the whole thing. This story does have something of a happy ending, though. In the days that followed, we got a lot of calls and messages of support from my relatives who I had not told about the incident. Turns out my brother had made some vague social media post about how sad he was for me and asking everyone to pray for my brother. Apparently, many of my relatives took this to mean I had been hurt and were all calling my mother and father. When my parents were forced to explain the situation, all of my relatives sided with my girlfriend and me. In the months that followed, this incident caused my grandmother to think back on how she had acted with her own daughters. Turns out that my mother had been the only marriage out of 3 daughters my grandmother had approved of. This incident made my grandmother realize that she had acted poorly with her other daughters, and she came to them to finally mend those old wounds. I had no idea, as it always seemed like my grandmother and her daughters had a great relationship, but these were old wounds that had just scabbed rather than really healed. Overall, my family got closer because of this. In addition, my father has had a dramatic change over the course of the intervening years. Where once it seemed like we were not going to invite my parents to our wedding, my dad ended up actually being the happiest person there when my girlfriend, now wife, and I tied the knot. This has been helped by the fact that he discovered some underlying mental health issues after that Thanksgiving, and the meds he is using are truly helping him. He has started acting like the father I loved when I was a kid. My mother is still a problem, and boy do I have more stories, but she is mostly behaving because she knows my wife and I can and will block her from seeing her future grandchildren. Here's some edits for clarification. First of all, thank you all for the kind words, support, awards, and discussion. I never imagined this would blow up like it has. There are so many comments I don't think I could possibly address all of them, so I wanted to add some details, clarify things, and answer questions. First, I don't think my parents' issue was really about my wife being Jewish in particular, so much as it was about her not being from our church. I think they would have had an issue even if she was Protestant and would have insisted she join our church instead of whatever church she was in. My parents certainly have some racial bias, they're probably not even aware of themselves, but I don't think that was really what was at play in this instance. Second, yeah, my dad was probably the worst person in the story, but I can't understate just how much he has changed since then. He was nearly jumping up and down with joy when my wife and I said we were going to start trying for a kid after moving from our apartment to our new house. On the other hand, my mother has not changed, only been cowed by the fact that she can't control my wife and I. Third, my brother likely has the same underlying mental health issues my father does, based on the behaviors I've seen, but unlike my father, he refuses to look into it further. Fourth, to the people who asked why my wife actually stayed with me through all this, I completely get where you're coming from. Sometimes even I don't know why she stayed. She has the fortitude of a saint, I swear. In the end, I think this all worked out with us together because we were a team. It may have sounded from the way I described the story that I was not standing up for her, but my wife and I talked extensively before each encounter with my parents and set up clear boundaries we would set, and we worked together as a team. That Thanksgiving night was extremely tense, but we went in prepared for something like that to happen, and we both already discussed how we would respond. Additionally, I had told my wife that all she had to do was ask, and I would cut all contact with my parents, no questions asked. She never got to the point of pulling that trigger, though that Thanksgiving came close. This is John from /bash. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video and want to be the first to know when the next one drops, subscribe and click on the notifications bell. Otherwise, YouTube won't even let you know about it. We would love for you to drop a like, share it with your friends, and we will see you in the next one.